I've worked with people who will tell me that their parents never showed any affect.
Yeah.
Literally stoic all the time. So that it taught them that they're not supposed to talk about it. Or if they show a negative emotion or they say something, the parents are like, oh, hush,
Yeah.
like, I don't want you to talk about that.
Yeah.
So then they learn that they're not supposed to. And then as adults, they learn to shut that part of themselves away.
So when we talk about the specific tools that can be used to mitigate this type of change, the first one is encouraging affect?
Yeah, encouraging affect.
Affect,
so,
okay.
Oftentimes people who have insecure attachment have a lot of difficulty with communicating affect in a pro-social way.
What does that mean, communicating affect?
So communicating their internal feelings.
Okay.
And talking about them in ways that would be actually pro-social and get them what they need.
Oh.
So for example, an adult who has anxious, preoccupied attachment, they will be over communicative with their emotions. They're even a little bit heightened when they talk about their feelings. And whenever they have a negative feeling, they feel like they have to act on it right away instead of, you know what, this is not the time, I'm in the middle of a work meeting. We can let that sit and I'll deal with my partner when I get home. No, they can't even focus at work. They're struggling with focusing on what they need to do that day with all of the feelings that they're having and the relationship dispute that they just had this morning. And so they start to act in a way that is very reassurance seeking from their partner. And the partner is like, what's going on? I'm at work. I don't have time to talk about this, right? And they get stressed out. And so you can see how this can play out. On the other side, individuals who are more dismissive in their attachment, they don't talk about their feelings at all. In fact, I've worked a lot with patients who we call alexithymic. And these are people who can't even put words to their emotional content.
Whoa.
If you ask them how they feel, they're like, I don't know. Do you feel sad? That would be an okay way to describe it. It's like, well, tell me how you feel. I'm not really sure. It's like they don't even go there to the point where they don't even understand their internal affective or feeling states anymore. So this type of technique is really about encouraging affect in a way that is not threatening to the person, but also teaching them that talking about your feelings is healthy and it doesn't have to be scary. And also, just because you have a feeling doesn't mean you have to react to it, right? So depending again on where your attachment difficulties are and how it's playing out in your current life, is it a role struggle? Is it a relationship issue? Is it a lack of social skills? Whatever it is, reconstructing that map of how to communicate and encourage affect in a way that would get them to the places that they need in life.
That's huge. That's really huge. Not to be, well, this is incredibly sexist, but don't you feel like men have a tougher time expressing how they feel than women?
And it makes a lot of sense because that is the social script that we've been given. Females are led to believe that it's more okay to talk about their feelings, whereas males in general, not as much. So unless you've had a parent or parents who really encourage that in you, in general, yes, men have a more difficult time expressing their emotions in a straightforward fashion than females do. But I think it can also vary, again, depending on how you were raised, what type of attachment issues you might have. Sometimes we find that there are a lot of women who have a hard time talking about their feelings. Again, because they've decided to view that as a sign of weakness.
Yes.
And perhaps they were taught that in their childhood, again, maybe coming from their attachments.
Right.
I've worked with people who will tell me that their parents never showed any affect.
Yeah.
Literally stoic all the time. So that it taught them that they're not supposed to talk about it. Or if they show a negative emotion or they say something, the parents are like, oh, hush, like, I don't want you to talk about that. So then they learn that they're not supposed to. And then as adults, they learn to shut that part of themselves away. And so this encouraging affect technique is really, really important for them to reestablish healthy emotional expression with their current relationships.
So is part of the IPT process then helping people cope or manage their relationship with somebody who maybe acts right away on feelings in the moment without really thinking about it?
Yeah, well, I think it might depend on the type of attachment style that you have. So if you're a dismissive person and your partner is an anxious, preoccupied person, that really needs to be worked on. And in fact, I find that pairing happen all the time. Earlier, we talked about the fact that people will reenact their earlier traumas and cycles. And so if you had a dismissive parent, you're most likely attachment development is going to be anxious, preoccupied. And then as an adult, you keep finding dismissive adults to try to replay that script with and try to fix that problem, but you end up with the same outcome.
Right.
And that makes you even more anxiously preoccupied.
But how, if I'm at work right now and my phone is blowing up because my partner thinks, I'm unfaithful.
Yeah.
And they want to talk about it right now, and they're going, that's even, I would actually understand that a little bit. But
Right.
let's say I forgot to lock the door, and they are angry that I forgot to lock the door again, and they want to talk to me right. What do I do about that?
So I think depending on, again, where you are. So are you a securely attached person or you're a dismissively attached person? You may need to work on different things. So as a healthy attached person, what you need to work on is a healthy assurance of that person, right? How do I assure this person, but also put boundaries on what they're doing? I understand that you're stressed out. I'm assuring you that I've locked the door. Let's talk in about an hour when I have a break.
Got it.
Right? And I think that's probably going to be the same type of technique you would teach somebody who has a dismissive attachment, but it might be harder for them in the beginning because they might be very reactive, like, oh my gosh, the more that you do this, the more it just makes me want to never talk to you, even though I'm just sitting here and I could respond to you, but I'm doing it on purpose because I don't want you to rely on me so much and it bothers me. So again, I think the technique is a little bit different depending, but it's such a good example, I think, because I think people can relate to that.
Sure, of course.
There's these different styles that people tend to communicate in.
Yeah. Okay, let's move to clarification.
So clarification is focusing on not only the communication styles, but also your internal beliefs about it. So if you have a very extreme belief, clarification is really understanding where that comes from and trying to resolve it. So clarification can also involve some CBT where you examine that belief and you say, well, this belief doesn't make sense. Where did it come from? And how is it playing out in your life right now? But clarification can also come from our communication. If you say something and I think I heard something, teaching techniques like, wait, let me just make sure I understood what you just said, Kyle. And then I summarize what I think you said and ask you, is that correct? And then you can say, no, that's not it at all. Actually, what I was trying to tell you is this. And that resolves 90% of communication conflicts because usually we react to what we think we heard. And so that clarification process, even taught as a tool between people who are trying to talk, is so helpful because one, it slows down the process. So if you're already reactive, forcing you to stop and summarize what the other person said and then allowing them to clarify back to you, yes, that's what I said, or no, it's not, it slows down the reaction.
Yes.
Right? Because usually you just get into a frenzy. Well, and then you did this, and then you did this, and then you did this, and you did this. And so that can also be very, very helpful. And I think that can even be a way in which you can clarify even on text or emails, because people just get into a texting storm, which, by the way, people who tend to get into texting storms are people who are more anxious, preoccupied. When you see 15 texts in a row that maybe could have been summarized into one intact text, but and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. But if you utilize the clarification technique here, you can say, hold on, you texted me 15 different messages. Let me try to understand what it is that you're trying to say here. Are you trying to say this?
Right.
It breaks up that communication even when it's something like text.
I don't know if this is completely relevant, but in the last few months, I had this big realization that most arguments are not because we differ in our viewpoint. It's that we differ in the definition of one of the words being used. So if we said, if somebody said, do you think Disneyland is fun? You might say yes, and I might say no. And it's because you and I have different definitions of the word fun.
Right.
But we will instead argue why the components of Disneyland that I don't think are fun and the components that you do, rather than just agreeing, oh, we have different definitions of the word fun, right?
Makes so much sense.
Yeah, and so that clarification can, I feel like, squash a ton of disagreements, a ton of arguments if we just say, all right, before you say we're going to do this early tomorrow, what is early to you?
Right.
Because early to me is 5 a.m. If you're thinking it's 9 a.m., then that's not early. We need to clarify the definitions of the words we're using.
Absolutely. Language is a tool in which we use to communicate, but not everybody uses language in the same way.
Yes.
Right. And
remember
that's
when
what
you
you're
had me
saying.
describe how to stand up and
Yeah.
I couldn't do it during our ACT series. You had me describe getting out of the chair. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
I'll take my hands. And she's like, what do you mean take your hands? You know,
Right.
every little step.
Yeah.
So yeah, that clarification point is a life changer, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, let's move to communication analysis.
Okay, communication analysis. So this is great. I think that this is where the therapist can impart so much knowledge in terms of how people work when they're in a didactic and they're talking to each other. And so sometimes you don't even realize the nonverbals that you're giving off.
Oh yeah.
And as somebody's talking, you're already like looking away, and that's a dismissive gesture that maybe you don't even recognize, and even your partner's not calling you out on, and the therapist is saying, whoa, the minute you mentioned his mom, that started happening, right? And really analyzing the nonverbal and the verbal aspects of a communication pattern and identifying where the problem areas are and where you need to start troubleshooting. And oftentimes this involves seeing where things get triggered, like who's getting triggered by what, or what makes people go away and withdraw. And also how people respond to a technique that you actually think is helpful. So sometimes, let's say one person agrees to use the clarification techniques and somebody does not. And when you try to do the clarification technique on your partner, they roll their eyes. So it's like, okay, well, what about this clarification technique is turning you off? Because clearly you look turned off. So
now we got to clarify your response to the
clarification technique. Yeah, and so a lot of this is actually almost like a behavioral observation that the therapist will do, and then they'll provide an analysis of what they think is the strengths in your communication, as well as the areas that need to be fixed.
Oh, so
and
good.
then teach you the specific techniques on how to do better.
Yeah. What great insight to have.
Right? I think it's so fun.
I get to watch myself back on camera, and so I'm aware of the facial expressions I'll make and not, but I don't have that insight when I'm just sitting and talking with a friend, and I'm probably more vulnerable. But I've been told by friends saying, you know, however you're feeling, you wear that on your face. So if I'm telling you a story and you don't believe me, it shows. And so
I'm the
I
same
have to
way.
watch that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And on the one hand, I want to watch it, but on the other hand, I don't want to watch it, right? Because it's like my value is to just be an authentic person.
True.
So it's an interesting thing too, like when we're talking about sort of what's important and what's the definition of something.
Yes.
So some people might say, well, no, to be a polite person, you should watch your facial expressions. And maybe that's why they're upset with you.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, no, to be a polite person is to be an honest person.
Yes.
And that's why I do what I do. And
Wow.
but then once you get that understanding, perhaps it'll resolve some of the conflicts that you were having
or
their reactions to you.
Yes. Oh, this is so good. Okay. The final one is facilitating behavioral change. This sounds like the toughest.
Yeah, so this is where you actually have to put all of your intellectual learnings into practice, right? So, okay, this is why I communicate the way I do. Oh, okay, I have a type of attachment that would make it more difficult for me to have a relationship with so-and-so. But what do you actually do about it? Well, a lot of it involves some role play in the therapy session. You know, how do we actually put this into practice? Okay, let's pretend I'm your dad, and we're going home for the holidays, and you're going to get into this conversation. It's going to activate you. So let's talk about how you might manage that. But aside from the role play, the therapist will also assign you to do behavioral experiments in your real life. Like, okay, this week's assignment is for you to go and talk to your sister about the fact that she lied to you the last time she talked to you and how that made you feel, and doing so in a way that doesn't provoke a lot of emotional reaction, but still gets to the point of what you're trying to say to her. Because if you want to have a good relationship with her, you have to be able to trust her, right? And so really kind of giving you these assignments, and then you going out and doing these assignments and then reporting back and letting them know how you did, and then restructuring more assignments to make you more and more effective and have higher levels of confidence in all of your interactions.
This sounds so good.
It's so fun.
I feel like I need this.
Yeah. I feel like everybody could benefit from this.
Absolutely.
You think that you're doing a good job, but maybe you could be better.
Well, we all can be better. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are things that I would avoid unknowingly, like having a call with my sister because she lied. I go, my sister lies. I'm going to try to not let that bother me, but I might learn through therapy that it really does bother me. And more importantly, I can learn how to have a conversation with her to improve our relationship. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Amazing.
Who doesn't want that?
Final thoughts on these 4 areas.
Well, I would say that, we're all social beings. That's what human beings are. We're all social beings. And that's why I find IPT can be just so immensely helpful no matter what you're going through.
Yeah.
And everybody can benefit from a communication analysis. Everybody can benefit from learning clarification techniques.
Yeah.
I found that when I first learned that, and sometimes we call it reflection, where you reflect back what the person said, maybe in slightly different words, but hopefully still capturing the gist. It was amazing because sometimes you felt great, like, okay, I'm getting it. I know what you're saying. Other times you're like, whoa, somehow I completely missed the mark, because they'll correct you and you'll say, whoa, because I was about to go on a whole other tangent because of my belief of what you just said.
That's right.
And now that you've corrected me, all of those feelings of stress and angst about, oh my gosh, now we have to talk about this whole other thing that we don't agree on, just went away, because actually we agree.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Check out the links below for more information on how to access this full series, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch new mental health videos every week. Did you like what you heard in this video? If you want to ask a MedCircle doctor a question directly, you can learn how by visiting the links in the description below.